How to Force Yourself to Take Action. Written and published by Mindset Masters Audiobook. Part 1. Why You Don't Take Action, and Why It's Not Laziness. Most people believe they don't take action because they are lazy, unmotivated, or undisciplined. This belief is not only false, it is destructive. It keeps people stuck in self-blame instead of progress. The truth is far more practical and empowering. People don't take action because their internal systems are misaligned. Action is not a personality trait. It is not something you either have or don't have. Action is the result of how your mind processes fear, effort, reward, identity, and certainty. When those systems work together, action feels natural. When they work against each other, even simple tasks feel heavy, overwhelming, or impossible. Understanding this changes everything. Because once you stop labeling yourself as lazy, you stop fighting yourself and start building leverage. The hidden cost of inaction. Inaction doesn't just delay success. It slowly reshapes your identity. Every time you avoid doing what you know you should do, something subtle happens internally. You begin to trust yourself less. You hesitate more. You lower expectations. Over time, this creates a quiet cycle. You delay, you feel guilt, you avoid, you repeat. This cycle is dangerous not because of the task you didn't complete, but because of the story you start telling yourself. I always start but never finish. I know what to do, I just don't do it. Maybe I'm not the kind of person who follows through. Action builds confidence. Inaction erodes it. And the longer you wait, the heavier action feels. Not because the task changed, but because your mind learned avoidance. Motivation is not the problem. Most people wait for motivation. That is the first mistake. Motivation is unreliable. It spikes randomly and disappears without warning. If action depended on motivation, nothing meaningful would ever be built consistently. Here's the truth. Motivation follows action. It does not create it. Action creates momentum. Momentum creates clarity. Clarity creates motivation. When you act, even imperfectly, your brain receives new evidence. I move. I execute. I follow through. That evidence rewires how effort feels. Why your brain resists action. Your brain is not designed to help you succeed. It is designed to keep you safe and conserve energy. From your brain's perspective, starting something new equals uncertainty. Uncertainty equals potential risk. Risk equals threat. So your brain does what it does best, it resists. This resistance shows up as overthinking, procrastination, distraction, sudden fatigue, perfectionism, waiting for the right time. None of these mean you are weak. They mean your brain is doing its job, just not in alignment with your goals. To force action, you don't fight your brain. You outsmart it. Action requires identity alignment. People who take action consistently don't rely on willpower. They rely on identity. They don't ask, "Do I feel like doing this?" They act from statements like, "I'm the kind of person who finishes. I act before I feel ready. I don't negotiate with hesitation." Your actions are always loyal to who you believe you are. If you see yourself as someone who needs pressure to act, someone who works best at the last minute, someone who struggles with discipline, your behavior will protect that identity. Forcing action starts by changing the rules you live by, not by trying harder. The comfort trap. Comfort is one of the biggest enemies of action. Comfort feels harmless. It feels earned. It feels safe. But comfort slowly trains your nervous system to avoid effort. The more comfort you allow, the harder effort feels. The more resistance you experience, the more excuses sound reasonable. Action is uncomfortable at first because growth requires tension. The goal is not to eliminate discomfort, but to normalize it. When discomfort becomes familiar, action becomes automatic. Why thinking more makes things worse. When people feel stuck, they try to think their way out. They plan more, research more, watch more videos, wait for more clarity. But action does not come from thinking. It comes from movement. Thinking without action creates analysis paralysis, fear amplification, decision fatigue. Action simplifies everything. One step reveals the next step. One movement creates momentum. One decision breaks stagnation. You don't need confidence to act. You need action to create confidence. The action equation. Action happens when three elements align: clarity and knowing the next small step, lowered resistance, making the step easy enough to start, immediate feedback, seeing progress quickly. When any of these are missing, action stalls. Most people fail because they try to do too much at once, start too big, wait until they feel ready. Forcing action means designing systems where starting is easier than avoiding. The power of micro-movement. Your brain resists big commitments but allows small ones. That's why the most powerful action trigger is this. Just start for 2 minutes. Not to finish. Not to be perfect. Just to begin. 2 minutes bypasses fear. 2 minutes reduces resistance. 2 minutes often turns into more. And even when it doesn't, it still reinforces identity. I showed up. Consistency is built from starting, not finishing. You don't rise to goals, you fall to systems. Goals inspire. Systems execute. If your environment encourages distraction, comfort, and delay, no amount of motivation will save you. Action-oriented people design their surroundings to support movement. Fewer decisions, fewer temptations, clearer cues, faster starts. Your environment should push you forward when your mind hesitates. Action is a skill. This is the most important truth in this book. Action is trainable. Just like strength, endurance, or focus, the ability to act improves with repetition. The more you act, the faster you recover from resistance, the less fear you feel before starting, the more natural execution becomes. Inaction weakens the action muscle. Action strengthens it. There is no neutral. This is where the shift begins. Not by waiting, not by hoping, not by blaming yourself, but by understanding that action is not about motivation, it's about structure, identity, and momentum. Part 2. The internal triggers that stop you from starting. Before you can force yourself to take action, you must understand what actually stops action. Not on the surface, but underneath. Most people try to fight procrastination with discipline, motivation, or pressure. That almost never works long-term, because procrastination is not the problem. It is a symptom. Action is blocked internally by a small set of predictable triggers. These triggers fire automatically, often without conscious awareness, and once they activate, your brain shifts into avoidance mode. You don't feel lazy, you feel heavy, distracted, uncertain, or strangely tired. If you don't learn to recognize these triggers, they will control you quietly and consistently. Trigger 1. Fear disguised as logic. Fear rarely announces itself clearly. It doesn't say, "I'm scared." Instead, it disguises itself as logic, caution, and preparation. It sounds like, "I should research this a bit more. I don't want to rush and mess it up. I'll start when I have more time. I just need to be in the right mindset." This type of fear feels intelligent, responsible, reasonable, but underneath it is the same core emotion: fear of outcome, fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of wasting effort, fear of success and the responsibility it brings. The brain tries to protect you by delaying action until certainty appears. The problem is that certainty never comes before action. It only comes after. If you wait for fear to disappear, you will wait forever. Trigger 2. Overwhelm from undefined task. Your brain does not resist work. It resists unclear work. When a task feels vague or too large, your brain interprets it as a threat because it can't predict effort, duration, or outcome. This creates overwhelm, and overwhelm immediately shuts down action. This is why start a business feels paralyzing. Get in shape feels heavy. Fix my life feels impossible. The task is not actionable because it has no clear starting point. Action only happens when the brain can answer one question. What exactly do I do next? Clarity removes resistance. Vagueness multiplies it. Trigger 3. Emotional weight from past failure. Your brain keeps a memory of past attempts. Every time you started something and quit, promised yourself you'd change and didn't, failed publicly or privately, your brain stores emotional data. So when you try again, the brain doesn't see the new task. It sees the emotional memory of disappointment, embarrassment, or frustration, and it tries to protect you from reliving it. That protection shows up as hesitation, avoidance, self-doubt, sudden distraction. This is why starting again often feels harder than starting the first time. You are not fighting the task. You are fighting accumulated emotional weight. Trigger 4. Identity conflict. This is one of the most powerful and least understood blockers of action. If the action you need to take conflicts with how you currently see yourself, resistance skyrockets. Examples. If you see yourself as not disciplined, disciplined action feels unnatural. If you see yourself as not confident, bold action feels unsafe. If you see yourself as someone who struggles, consistency feels fake. Your brain will always protect identity before goals. This is why people self-sabotage right before progress. Growth threatens the familiar version of you, even if that version is unhappy. To your brain, familiar pain feels safer than unfamiliar success. Trigger 5. Dopamine hijacking. Your brain is wired to seek immediate reward and avoid delayed gratification. Modern distractions exploit this perfectly. Social media, endless content, notifications, entertainment on demand. These provide instant dopamine with zero effort. Action, on the other hand, often requires effort first, reward later. So when you try to act, your brain compares effort now for future reward versus pleasure now with no effort. Without systems in place, distraction wins every time. This is not a discipline failure. It is a design failure. Trigger 6. Waiting for the right feeling. Many people believe they must feel ready before acting. They wait for confidence, clarity, motivation, energy. But feelings are reactive, not directive. If you let feelings decide when you act, your progress will be inconsistent and fragile. Feelings fluctuate. Systems don't. High performers act first and let feelings catch up. Why willpower is not the solution. Willpower is limited. It drains quickly. It fails under stress, fatigue, or emotion. Trying to force action using willpower is like trying to hold your breath forever. You might succeed briefly, but you will eventually give in. Sustainable action comes from removing resistance, not overpowering it. The goal is not to push harder. The goal is to make starting easier. Awareness is leverage. The moment you can identify which trigger is stopping you, you gain power. Ask yourself, is this fear pretending to be logic? Is the task unclear? Is this past failure speaking? Is my identity resisting change? Am I choosing instant comfort over long-term progress? You don't need to solve everything. You just need to name the blocker. Awareness creates distance. Distance creates choice. Choice creates action. The rule of immediate reduction. When resistance appears, your job is simple. Shrink the action until resistance disappears. Not later. Immediately. If your brain resists, writing, open the document. Exercising, put on shoes. Working, set a 5-minute timer. You are not trying to succeed. You are trying to start. Starting breaks the internal loop. Action is mechanical before it is emotional. Most people think action is emotional. It's not. Action is mechanical. You don't need to feel different. You need to move differently. Motion creates emotion. Movement creates clarity. Execution creates confidence. Part 3. How to bypass resistance instantly and start anyway. Once you understand what stops action, the next step is learning how to move before resistance takes control. This part is not about hype or motivation. It's about mechanics. Action becomes reliable when you treat it like a system, not a feeling. Resistance always shows up before action, never after. If you wait until resistance disappears, you've already lost. The goal is not to defeat resistance. It's to move faster than it can organize itself. This is where most people fail. They notice resistance and pause to analyze it. That pause gives resistance time to grow. Action-oriented people do the opposite. They act first and analyze later. The 5-second window. The moment you think about doing something productive, there is a brief window before your brain starts negotiating. That window is short, usually less than 5 seconds. In that moment, the idea is still neutral. It hasn't been evaluated, judged, or compared to comfort yet. If you hesitate, your brain fills the gap with excuses, doubts, and distractions. Action requires speed at the start, not intensity. When a task appears, stand up, open the tool, move your body, touch the work. No thinking, no planning, just motion. Momentum starts with movement, not intention. Lowering the entry cost. Your brain resists tasks that look expensive in terms of effort, time, or emotional energy. So instead of asking, "How do I finish this?" you ask, "What is the smallest possible action that counts as starting?" Examples: not write a chapter, open the document. Not work out, put on workout clothes. Not build the business, send one message. Not fix my life, clean one surface. The brain allows small actions. Once started, continuing becomes easier than stopping. Action compounds forward. The 2-minute rule revisited. 2 minutes is not a productivity trick. It is a psychological bypass. Your brain cannot justify resisting something that short. It doesn't feel dangerous. It doesn't feel costly. It doesn't threaten identity. 2 minutes creates proof of movement, identity reinforcement, reduced emotional weight. You are not committing to success. You are committing to motion. Most of the time, 2 minutes turns into more. And when it doesn't, it still wins because it keeps the action habit alive. Remove choice from the equation. Choice is where action dies. Every time you ask, "Should I do this now? Do I feel like it? Maybe later?" you give resistance a voice. Action-oriented people eliminate choice through rules. Rules like, I start before checking my phone. I work for 25 minutes before stopping. I act first, adjust later. No 0 days. Rules reduce decision fatigue. They turn action into default behavior. You don't negotiate with a rule. You follow it. Use physical movement to break mental stagnation. The mind follows the body. When you feel stuck, tired, or foggy, the fastest way to force action is physical movement. Stand up, walk, stretch, change rooms, wash your face. Stillness feeds hesitation. Movement disrupts it. You don't think your way into action. You move your way into clarity. Environmental triggers. Your environment is always pushing you toward something. If it's not designed for action, it's designed for distraction by default. People who take action consistently don't rely on discipline alone. They design their environment to make action obvious and frictionless. Examples: tools visible and ready, distractions removed or blocked, clear workspace, one task in front of you, not 10. When action is easier than avoidance, progress becomes automatic. The ugly first version rule. Perfectionism is resistance pretending to be quality control. The rule is simple. Your first version is allowed to be bad. Bad but done beats perfect but delayed. Action creates feedback. Feedback creates improvement. Improvement creates confidence. Waiting to feel ready delays growth. Start ugly. Refine later. Action builds identity faster than affirmations. You don't become disciplined by thinking disciplined thoughts. You become disciplined by doing disciplined actions, even small ones. Every action sends a signal. I am someone who moves. I follow through. I don't wait. Identity is built from evidence, not intention. The smallest completed action carries more power than the biggest planned one. What to do when resistance hits mid-task? Resistance doesn't disappear once you start. It often shows up again halfway through. When it does, reduce scope, slow down, shorten the time, change posture, reset focus. Do not stop completely. Stopping teaches avoidance. Adjusting teaches persistence. The rule of non-zero action. No matter how bad the day is, you do something. One sentence, one rep, one message, one step. Zero is the enemy. Non-zero keeps momentum alive and identity intact. Consistency is not about intensity. It's about continuity. Action does not require confidence. Confidence is built after action. Action does not require motivation. Motivation is created by action. Action does not require readiness. Readiness comes from movement. Part 4. Why motivation fails and what actually moves you. Most people wait for motivation. They wait to feel ready. They wait to feel confident. They wait for a surge of energy, clarity, or inspiration that never seems to arrive. And while they wait, life keeps moving. Goals stay untouched. Plans stay unfinished. Potential stays locked away. Here is the truth most people never hear. Motivation is unreliable. Action is not. Motivation is emotional. Action is mechanical. Motivation comes and goes. Action can be initiated on command. If you want to force yourself to take action, the first thing you must do is stop relying on motivation as your engine. Motivation is a spark, not a system. And sparks die quickly when there is no structure to support them. People who consistently take action are not more motivated than you. They are simply no longer dependent on motivation to move. They have built a different operating system. The motivation myth that keeps you stuck. Motivation feels good, which is why it's so seductive. When you're motivated, everything seems possible. Your mind races with ideas. Your future feels bright. You promise yourself that this time will be different. But motivation without action creates a dangerous illusion of progress. You feel productive without producing anything. You feel committed without committing behavior. You feel powerful without doing the work. And then motivation fades. When it does, most people assume something is wrong with them. They think they lack discipline, willpower, or drive. But the problem is not personal failure. The problem is the system they're using. Motivation was never designed to carry long-term effort. It is reactive. It depends on mood, energy, environment, and emotion. It collapses under stress, boredom, discomfort, or fear. If your plan to succeed requires you to feel like it, you have already lost. Action comes before motivation, not after. This is the reversal that changes everything. Action creates motivation. Motivation does not create action. When you move your body, your mind follows. When you start small, momentum builds. When you act despite resistance, confidence grows. The brain is a prediction machine. It updates its beliefs based on behavior, not intention. When you consistently take action, even small, imperfect action, your brain starts to believe, this is who we are now. Identity changes. Self-trust increases. Resistance weakens. But if you wait to feel motivated, your brain receives a different message. We don't act unless conditions are perfect. And perfection never comes. Why your brain resists action? Your brain's primary job is not to help you succeed. Its primary job is to keep you safe. Action means uncertainty. Uncertainty means risk. Risk means potential loss. So when you try to act, your brain activates resistance. Procrastination, overthinking, self-doubt, distraction, fear disguised as logic. This resistance is not a sign that you're weak. It's a sign that you're human. The mistake is interpreting resistance as a signal to stop. In reality, Resistance is a signal that growth is near. The rule of non-negotiable start. If you want to force yourself to take action, you must remove choice from the starting process. Choice invites negotiation. Negotiation invites delay. Delay kills momentum. High performers don't decide whether to start. They decide when to start, and then they start automatically. This is called a non-negotiable start. It does not mean you force yourself to finish. It means you force yourself to begin. You commit to opening the document, putting on the shoes, sitting at the desk, starting the timer. Once started, the hardest part is already done. The 5-minute override. Your brain exaggerates effort before you begin. What feels overwhelming in thought becomes manageable in action. The solution is simple and brutally effective. Commit to just 5 minutes. Not 5 minutes of perfect effort. Not 5 minutes of intensity. Just 5 minutes of starting. 5 minutes lowers resistance. 5 minutes bypasses fear. 5 minutes tricks the brain into motion. And once motion begins, momentum takes over. Most of the time, you won't stop at 5 minutes. But even if you do, you still win. Consistency beats intensity every time. Discipline is not harsh, it is kind. Many people associate forcing action with punishment. They imagine discipline as cruelty, pressure, or self-attack. But true discipline is an act of self-respect. Discipline says, I don't abandon myself when it's uncomfortable. I keep promises even when it's inconvenient. I choose future relief over temporary comfort. Every time you act when you don't feel like it, you strengthen trust with yourself. And self-trust is the foundation of confidence. The environment is stronger than willpower. If you rely on willpower alone, you will burn out. Willpower is limited. Environment is persistent. People who take consistent action design their surroundings to make action easier and inaction harder. They remove friction from good habits. They add friction to bad ones. They don't fight temptation, they redesign access. Your environment should silently push you forward when motivation disappears. Action is a skill, not a personality trait. Some people think they are not action takers. This belief is false and harmful. Action is learned. Momentum is trained. Discipline is built through repetition. No one starts disciplined. They become disciplined by acting before they feel ready. Every action taken rewires your nervous system. Every completed task strengthens your identity. Every resisted excuse weakens future resistance. You are not broken. You are untrained. And training begins with one forced action at a time. The cost of inaction is always higher. Inaction feels safe in the moment. But it compounds quietly. Lost time. Missed opportunities. Unlived potential. Growing regret. The pain of action is temporary. The pain of regret is permanent. When you force yourself to act, you are not choosing discomfort. You are choosing freedom. The shift that changes everything. Stop asking, how do I feel? Start asking, what is the next physical action? Emotion follows behavior. Clarity follows movement. Confidence follows completion. You don't need motivation. You need momentum. And momentum begins the moment you decide to move, whether you feel ready or not. Part 5. Destroying procrastination at the root. Procrastination is not laziness. It is not a lack of ambition. It is not a character flaw. And it is definitely not proof that you don't want success badly enough. Procrastination is a self-protection mechanism. Your brain delays action because it is trying to protect you from discomfort, uncertainty, failure, judgment, or loss of control. Every time you procrastinate, your brain is saying one thing: this feels unsafe. Until you understand this, you will keep fighting procrastination the wrong way, through guilt, pressure, and self-criticism. And those methods don't work long-term. They only deepen resistance. To force yourself to take action consistently, you must stop attacking procrastination and start dismantling the system that creates it. Why procrastination feels so powerful. The brain is wired to prioritize short-term relief over long-term reward. When faced with a task that feels uncomfortable, uncertain, or mentally demanding, your brain offers alternatives. Check your phone, scroll social media, watch a video, do something easier, do something familiar. These alternatives deliver immediate relief. Dopamine spikes, tension drops. You feel better for a moment. But that relief comes at a cost. Every time you procrastinate, you train your brain to associate avoidance with safety and comfort. Over time, avoidance becomes automatic. You don't even decide to procrastinate, it just happens. This is not weakness. This is conditioning. And anything that is conditioned can be reconditioned. The hidden loop that keeps you stuck. Procrastination follows a predictable cycle. You decide to do something meaningful. Resistance appears. You delay. You feel temporary relief. Guilt and self-judgment follow. Your confidence drops. The task feels even heavier next time. This loop repeats until action feels impossible. The key is not to break the entire loop. The key is to interrupt it at the first physical moment. Not mentally. Physically. Thought is the enemy of action. The more you think about a task, the heavier it becomes. Thought inflates effort. Thought magnifies fear. Thought creates imaginary obstacles. Action collapses them. People who act quickly are not reckless. They simply understand that thinking is useful after movement begins, not before. If you wait until your mind is calm, confident, and clear, you will wait forever. Force action before thought takes control. The 10-second rule of movement. When you recognize resistance, you have a brief window, about 10 seconds, before your brain builds a story strong enough to stop you. In that window, you must move. Stand up. Open the laptop. Grab the notebook. Put your hands on the keyboard. No debate. No analysis. Movement first. Thinking later. This one rule alone can collapse years of procrastination. Procrastination is fueled by overwhelming goals. Your brain does not resist work. It resists undefined effort. Work on my goals is too vague. Fix my life is too large. Be successful is meaningless. The brain freezes when it cannot see a clear endpoint. Action becomes easy when tasks are small, specific, and concrete. Not, I'll work on the project, but I'll write one paragraph. I'll outline 3 bullet points. I'll set a 10-minute timer. Clarity reduces resistance. Specificity creates momentum. The identity shift that ends procrastination. As long as you see yourself as someone who tries to be disciplined, procrastination will always feel personal. The shift happens when you stop negotiating with your identity. Instead of asking, "Do I feel like doing this?" you decide, "This is what I do now." Action becomes automatic when it is no longer tied to mood. You brush your teeth without motivation. You don't debate whether to stand up after sitting too long. You don't need inspiration to eat when you're hungry. Why? Because these actions are identity-based. When action becomes part of who you are, resistance loses its grip. You must act before confidence arrives. Confidence is not a prerequisite for action. Confidence is a byproduct of action. Waiting for confidence is like waiting for muscle before lifting weight. Every time you act without confidence, you build it. Every time you delay until confidence appears, you weaken it. Confidence grows from evidence. Evidence comes from behavior. No action equals no evidence. No evidence equals no confidence. Emotional resistance is normal. Do it anyway. There will be days when action feels heavy. Days when your energy is low. Days when fear is loud. These days are not exceptions. They are the training ground. Discipline is not built on good days. It is built on ordinary, uncomfortable ones. If you only act when conditions are perfect, your growth will always be fragile. Real power comes from acting despite internal resistance. The power of starting ugly. Perfectionism is procrastination wearing a smarter disguise. The need to do it right keeps you from doing it at all. The rule is simple. Start ugly. Improve later. Messy action beats perfect inaction. Progress beats polish. Completion beats brilliance. You can't refine what doesn't exist. Why self-trust matters more than talent. Every time you say you'll do something and don't, trust erodes. Every time you follow through, trust strengthens. Self-trust is not built by big promises. It is built by small kept ones. Force yourself to keep tiny commitments. They compound faster than motivation ever could. Eventually, your brain stops questioning whether you'll act. It already knows the answer. Procrastination dies when action becomes automatic. The goal is not to fight resistance forever. The goal is to make action so habitual that resistance barely appears. This happens through repetition, through structure, through removing choice. You don't rise to motivation. You fall to systems. Build systems that force movement even on low days. The moment that changes everything. There will be a moment, quiet, ordinary, unremarkable, when you act without overthinking. No drama. No emotional surge. Just movement. That moment is the beginning of freedom. Because from then on, action is no longer something you hope for. It is something you do. Part 6. Building relentless discipline that does not break under pressure. Discipline is misunderstood. Most people think discipline is about force, intensity, and pushing yourself to the edge every day. That idea sounds powerful, but it fails quietly over time. It creates burnout, resentment, and inconsistency. Real discipline is not aggressive. It is reliable. It works when motivation disappears. It holds when emotions fluctuate. It survives stress, boredom, and doubt. If action is the engine, discipline is the structure that keeps it running long after excitement fades. This part is about building discipline that does not rely on willpower, mood, or inspiration, discipline that becomes part of how you live. Why willpower is the weakest tool you have. Willpower feels strong in the moment, but it is fragile. It depends on sleep, energy, emotions, environment, stress levels. The more you rely on willpower, the more inconsistent your action becomes. That's why people can start strong and disappear quietly. Discipline that lasts is not fueled by effort. It is fueled by systems and standard. You don't force yourself every time. You remove the option not to act. Discipline is a set of non-negotiables. People with strong discipline don't ask themselves what they feel like doing. They decide in advance what must be done. They create rules that remove daily decision-making. Examples: I work before entertainment. I start my day with creation, not consumption. I don't skip twice. I show up even when progress feels slow. Rules protect action from emotion. The fewer decisions you make during the day, the stronger your discipline becomes. Emotional discipline comes before physical discipline. Most failures don't happen because the task is hard. They happen because emotions interfere. Boredom, doubt, frustration, fear, impatience. If you let emotions decide your actions, discipline collapses under pressure. Emotionally disciplined people don't eliminate feelings. They act without asking permission from them. They feel resistance and move anyway. They feel tired and adjust, not quit. They feel fear and proceed carefully, not passively. Emotion is information, not instruction. Train yourself to act on schedule, not mood. Mood-based action is unpredictable. Schedule-based action is unstoppable. When something is scheduled, it is no longer a question. It becomes a commitment, even if the output is lower, even if the energy is weaker, even if the work feels slow. You show up. Showing up consistently beats occasional intensity every time. Discipline is built through boring repetition. The mind craves novelty. Progress requires repetition. Discipline is trained through doing the same thing, at the same time, in the same way. even when it feels dull. This is where most people quit. Not because it's hard, but because it's boring. Boredom is not a sign to stop. It is a sign that discipline is forming. The power of minimum standards. On hard days, aiming for excellence creates paralysis. Instead, you set a minimum standard. Not your best. Not perfect. Just acceptable. Examples. Write 200 words, not 2,000. Train lightly instead of intensely. Do one task fully instead of many poorly. Minimum standards protect consistency. They prevent the all-or-nothing mindset that destroys discipline. Never miss twice. This rule alone can change your life. Missing once is human. Missing twice is the start of a new habit. You will fail occasionally. You will have off days. You will slip. What matters is the response. Get back immediately. Momentum is easier to rebuild when interruption is short. Discipline is easier when identity is clear. When you don't know who you are becoming, action feels optional. When identity is clear, discipline becomes natural. Instead of saying, "I'm trying to be disciplined," you say, "I am someone who follows through." Every action becomes a vote for that identity. Small actions count. Consistency matters more than intensity. Remove friction from the right things. Discipline is not about making everything hard. It's about making the right actions easy and the wrong actions hard. Examples. Prepare tools in advance. Reduce distractions. Automate reminders. Simplify routines. The environment should push you toward action without requiring constant effort. Discipline is a skill, not a personality trait. No one is born disciplined. They become disciplined through repetition and structure. If discipline feels unnatural now, that does not mean you lack it. It means it has not been trained yet. Training takes time. Progress is gradual. Consistency compounds. When discipline feels heavy, shrink the scope. You don't quit discipline when it feels hard. You scale it down. Do less. Slow down. Shorten the time. But keep the chain unbroken. A small win maintains identity. Stopping erodes it. Pressure is not the enemy. Lack of control is. Discipline doesn't mean crushing yourself under pressure. It means choosing pressure intentionally. You decide. What matters? What can wait? What is essential? Clarity reduces overwhelm. Focus strengthens discipline. Discipline is freedom in disguise. Undisciplined people feel free, but are controlled by mood, distraction, and circumstance. Disciplined people feel constrained, but gain control over time, energy, and direction. Short-term comfort trades long-term freedom. Short-term discipline creates long-term independence. The quiet strength of showing up daily. No applause. No recognition. No instant result. Just quiet, repeated action. This is how real progress is made. Discipline doesn't shout. It doesn't need validation. It compounds silently. There will come a point when action no longer feels forced. It becomes familiar, expected, normal. That is when discipline has done its job. Part 7. Acting under fear, doubt, and uncertainty. Fear, doubt, and uncertainty are not optional in life. They are inevitable. Every person who has ever achieved something meaningful has had to act while their body screamed, "Stop," while their mind questioned everything, and while the world seemed too chaotic to navigate. The difference between people who succeed and people who stall is not the absence of fear. It is how they act despite it. Fear is a signal, not a stop sign. Doubt is a guidepost, not a roadblock. Uncertainty is the terrain, not the destination. In this part, we will dissect these forces, understand how they manifest in the mind and body, and most importantly, learn practical ways to move forward when the world, and your own brain, are screaming no. Fear is your brain's default setting. Fear is not weakness. It is your brain doing its job. Your brain's primary directive is survival. Evolution didn't prepare humans to create businesses, write books, or pursue lofty dreams. It prepared humans to avoid danger, conserve energy, and maintain social safety. When you act, your brain interprets it as risk. When risk appears, fear follows. Fear manifests in many forms: anxiety, hesitation, physical tension, overthinking, self-doubt. Each of these is an attempt to prevent action. But action is exactly what growth requires. The first step to acting under fear is reframing it. Fear is not a stop signal. It is a warning that you are on the path of growth. The sharper the fear, the greater the opportunity. Doubt is a thinking muscle out of shape. Doubt is not the absence of skill. It is the brain's way of testing your decision-making. It is checking reality, weighing outcomes, and ensuring survival. But modern life amplifies doubt. Social comparison, information overload, and perfectionism create constant questioning. Doubt often shows up as, "Am I ready? Is this the right choice? What if I fail?" The antidote to doubt is action evidence. Every time you move despite doubt, you train your nervous system to trust itself. Every action completed under doubt reinforces the identity. I am someone who follows through. Doubt does not vanish. It diminishes in power when overridden by consistent movement. Uncertainty, the only constant. Uncertainty is uncomfortable because the human mind craves predictability. The brain wants to calculate risks, foresee outcomes, and guarantee success before moving. Life does not work that way. Uncertainty is unavoidable. Waiting for certainty guarantees stagnation. Acting in uncertainty, however, trains your brain to become resilient, adaptable, and confident in the unknown. The first step is acceptance. Recognize that the future will always be partially hidden. Acting without complete information is not reckless, it is necessary. The mechanic of acting under fear. Acting under fear requires a system that bypasses the mind's natural resistance. Here's a framework. Physical initiation: move your body first. Walk toward the task, open the document, or pick up the tool. Motion preempts analysis. Micro-commitments: break the action into the smallest possible step. 5 minutes, 1 paragraph, 1 call. Completing the smallest step creates evidence of movement. External accountability: tell someone you will act, even if small. Accountability short-circuits internal negotiation. Immediate feedback: start an action that produces instant feedback, even minor. The brain rewards completion and reduces hesitation. When all four are applied, fear becomes manageable. It still exists, but it no longer controls you. The psychology of fake it until you start. Many people believe they must feel ready before action. This is a trap. Readiness is an emotional state, not a requirement. Instead, faking it is about acting as the person you want to be before your brain feels confident. Examples: if you want to be disciplined, start the work even when you feel lazy. If you want to be fit, move your body before motivation appears. If you want to write, type words before the perfect sentence comes to mind. Behavior precedes identity. Acting first rewires the brain, creates momentum, and reinforces the habit of courage. The 10-second override under fear. Fear intensifies the moment you hesitate. The longer you pause, the louder it becomes. To bypass fear, commit to the first 10 seconds of movement. Open the document. Start typing one word. Pick up the dumbbell. Make the call. Once the first motion occurs, your brain shifts from anticipation to execution. Resistance diminishes, and action becomes easier. Fear is not eliminated. It is neutralized by mechanical progress. Small wins build courage. Courage is not innate. It is developed. Every time you act under discomfort, doubt, or uncertainty, you log a small win. These wins accumulate silently. Courage is trained through repetition, just like a muscle. The more you act, the less intimidating the next step becomes. Fear is like an alarm system. Loud at first, quieter over time, until it no longer stops you. Momentum is the true anti-fear weapon. Fear feeds on stagnation. The moment you act, even minimally, momentum begins. Momentum reduces perceived risk. Momentum quiets doubt. Momentum diminishes uncertainty. This is why starting is always the hardest part. Once motion begins, everything else becomes easier. The goal is not to conquer fear entirely. The goal is to never allow it to stop you. The role of identity in acting under uncertainty. Your brain aligns behavior with identity. If you see yourself as someone who hesitates, procrastinates, or waits, your brain will find evidence to support that. If you see yourself as someone who acts despite fear, your brain will align with that narrative. Every forced action under fear is a vote for the identity of a decisive, courageous, and action-oriented person. Identity overrides emotion. Repetition solidifies it. Acting without feeling ready. The core truth: you never feel fully ready. Waiting for clarity is waiting for nothing. Waiting for motivation is waiting for a mirage. Waiting for confidence is waiting for a shadow. The only real path forward is start anyway. Each forced action creates the conditions that make the next step easier. You are not creating safety. You are creating habit, momentum, and trust in yourself. The systematic approach to fear, doubt, and uncertainty. Identify the fear, name what is holding you back. Shrink the step, break the task into the smallest possible movement. Move first. Take the physical step before analysis. Focus on completion, not perfection. Any forward motion counts. Reinforce identity. Tell yourself, I act even when it's uncomfortable. Build micro-momentum. Chain small wins together. Repeat daily. Consistency beats intensity. This system turns fear, doubt, and uncertainty from paralyzing forces into predictable, manageable signals. Why this part matters more than you realize. Most people never act because they wait for the perfect conditions. These conditions never arrive. Life is messy, unpredictable, and uncomfortable. Waiting guarantees stagnation. Acting guarantees growth. The people who succeed are not fearless. They are disciplined. They are relentless. They are consistent. They do not wait. They do not negotiate with hesitation. They start before they feel ready. They persist when doubt is loud. They move in uncertainty. And in doing so, they build a life few ever dare to pursue. Part 8. Turning small actions into unstoppable momentum. Momentum is not magic. Momentum is mechanical. It is a force that grows in proportion to your actions, not your feelings. The people who consistently achieve results are not inherently more talented, more motivated, or luckier. They are simply the ones who master the art of momentum. Understanding momentum is crucial because it is the secret bridge between taking a single step and creating a life of unstoppable action. Momentum allows action to continue without constant negotiation with your emotions, without relying on fleeting motivation, and without waiting for confidence to appear. This part will teach you exactly how to create, maintain, and accelerate momentum so that action becomes automatic and consistent, even when you feel tired, distracted, or doubtful. Why momentum works. Your mind and body respond to movement. When you act, even in the smallest way, your nervous system receives proof that you can handle discomfort. Each small win sends a signal to your brain. I am capable. I can continue. Momentum compounds because action breeds confidence, confidence breeds more action, and repetition solidifies the identity of someone who does not wait, hesitates, or stalls. Once momentum begins, resistance weakens. The task that seemed impossible yesterday becomes manageable today. Momentum is the bridge between intention and achievement. Without it, motivation, willpower, and inspiration are temporary and unreliable. With it, action becomes habitual, natural, and unstoppable. The first step, small wins. Momentum begins with small wins. These are deliberate, measurable, and achievable actions that signal progress. Examples: writing one paragraph instead of the whole chapter, completing a single set of exercises instead of a full workout, making one phone call instead of 100 emails. The key is starting small to avoid overwhelming your brain. Every small action creates movement in your system. Momentum accumulates silently, gradually, and powerfully. This is not about minimalism. It is about strategic initiation. Small wins are not laziness, they are leverage. They break the resistance and allow you to scale effortlessly. The 2-minute principle. This principle is deceptively simple. If it takes less than 2 minutes to start it immediately. Open the document. Put on workout clothes. Pick up your instrument. Make the first call. The goal is to eliminate the pause, the hesitation, the internal negotiation that gives your brain time to generate excuses. 2 minutes is not the goal, it is the spark. Once the spark ignites, momentum catches fire. Momentum is built, not found. People often wait for the right time or the perfect mood. This is a mistake. Momentum is not found in the world. It is engineered through repetition and structure. Schedule action consistently. Design systems to reduce friction. Automate triggers for progress. Remove distractions that slow motion. The person who builds momentum proactively can perform under any condition, regardless of external circumstances. Compound momentum. Momentum is compounding. Small actions today create larger results tomorrow. 1 page written today becomes a chapter in a month. 1 call made today becomes a client or opportunity in week. 1 workout today compounds into long-term health and energy. Momentum is not linear, it is exponential. Every step taken reinforces the next, and the next, until action becomes automatic and inevitable. The secret is never breaking the chain, no matter how small the step. How to protect momentum. Momentum is fragile when ignored. You must protect it like a resource. Consistency over intensity. Small, consistent actions maintain flow better than sporadic bursts. Avoid perfectionism, or seeking the perfect moment or perfect output will stall motion. Reset immediately after a slip. Missing 1 action is normal. Missing 2 can start a downward spiral. Measure progress. Momentum grows faster when tracked, celebrated, and reinforced. These are not motivational platitudes. They are mechanical truths about human behavior. Habits as momentum multipliers. Momentum thrives when habits are in place. Habits reduce decision-making and remove friction. When action is habitual, resistance weakens, and energy is conserved for meaningful growth. Examples: morning routines that start the day with motion and focus. Writing, exercise, or learning rituals repeated daily. Pre-prepared environments for work, creation, and health. Every habit is a mini momentum generator, silently pushing you forward without requiring constant mental energy. Momentum in the face of resistance. Even with momentum, resistance will appear. It never fully disappears, but momentum makes it manageable. When resistance shows, reduce the step but maintain movement. Do the smallest action possible to continue the chain. Keep the focus on motion, not perfection. Momentum transforms resistance from a stopping force into a signpost that growth is happening. The stronger the resistance, the more powerful the momentum needed to overcome it. Energy management is key. Momentum is physical as well as mental. Energy fuels action. The most consistent action takers are not superhuman. They are disciplined in energy management. Sleep is non-negotiable. Nutrition supports focus and stamina. Short bursts of movement break mental fatigue. Micro-rests sustain long-term performance. Without energy, even the most motivated person will stall. Momentum relies on sustainable energy more than short-lived bursts of willpower. Combining momentum with discipline. Discipline and momentum are inseparable. Discipline ensures the chain continues on low-energy days. Momentum accelerates results when energy is high. Together, they create a system where action is almost automatic. On high-energy days, momentum amplifies achievement. On low-energy days, discipline ensures the chain is unbroken. This dual system is what separates inconsistent action from unstoppable forward motion. Identity reinforcement through momentum. Every small win, repeated consistently, sends a signal to your brain. I am someone who moves. I am capable under pressure. I follow through despite discomfort. Over time, this internal identity becomes self-evident. You no longer question your ability to act. Momentum reinforces identity, and identity reinforces momentum. This is why successful people appear effortless. They have trained themselves to act first, feel second, consistently and repeatedly. How to scale momentum infinitely. Once momentum is established, scale it by increasing the number of small wins each day, creating systems that chain wins together automatically, leveraging compounding results. Use one completed task to catalyze the next, minimizing decision fatigue through rules, rituals, and routines. Momentum is not a one-time force. It is cumulative. The more you engineer it, the harder it is to stop. Daily practices that sustain momentum. Start each day with a high-leverage action before distraction. Track completed actions visually. Progress becomes addictive. Break tasks into micro-actions that can be completed in 5 to 10 minutes. Reinforce identity statements like, I act first. I follow through. I finish what I start. Celebrate completion, no matter how small. It fuels the compounding effect. These practices transform ordinary effort into unstoppable movement. Why momentum beats motivation every time. Motivation comes and goes. Momentum sustains itself. Motivation requires emotional alignment. Momentum requires movement, repetition, and reinforcement. You cannot rely on feeling inspired. You can rely on movement that becomes habit, chain, and identity. Momentum is the bridge between intention and results, between desire and achievement. It is the most consistent path to action when life is unpredictable, emotions fluctuate, and uncertainty is constant. Momentum is not a gift. It is created. It is maintained through deliberate, repeated motion. It is accelerated by discipline, habits, energy management, and identity reinforcement. Once you master momentum, resistance becomes a temporary obstacle, not a permanent barrier. Action becomes automatic, unstoppable, and continuous, regardless of circumstance, doubt, or fear. Part 9. Creating lifelong action habits and ironclad discipline. Action is not a one-time event. It is not a sudden surge of energy or motivation. Action is a lifestyle. It is a system you embed into your identity, your routines, your environment, and your thinking. The difference between people who achieve extraordinary results and those who drift through life is not talent, luck, or even knowledge. It is the ability to force consistent action over time, regardless of circumstance, mood, or fear. This part is about turning all the principles you have learned, forcing yourself to start, overcoming fear, building momentum, and mastering discipline, into a permanent system of action. It is about ensuring that no matter what happens, you continue to move forward, grow, and achieve. The chain reaction of daily action. Every action you take today has a ripple effect on tomorrow. Completing a single task strengthens identity. Completing tasks consistently trains the nervous system. Training the nervous system builds confidence. Confidence fuels bigger actions. Bigger actions create bigger results. This is the chain reaction of progress. Momentum is created when these small victories compound over weeks, months, and years. The first action might feel insignificant, but over time, it accumulates into extraordinary achievement. This is why consistency is more powerful than intensity. High-intensity bursts may create short-term gains, but they are unsustainable. Consistent action, repeated every day without fail, produces compounding results that far exceed sporadic effort. The habit machine. How to automate action. The most powerful people in the world are not stronger-willed than others. They are habitually consistent. They have automated action so that it happens without negotiation, hesitation, or thought. Here is the framework for building habits that force action. Anchor new habits to existing routines. Link action to something you already do automatically. For example, after brushing your teeth, write one paragraph. After making your morning coffee, outline your top priority task. After checking emails, do one small productive action before anything else. Start tiny, scale slowly. Big habits feel overwhelming. Tiny habits feel doable. They also bypass resistance. Once the small habit is built, scale it gradually while momentum carries it forward. Track every action. Visual evidence of action creates feedback that your brain craves. Crossing off completed tasks, logging progress, or even checking a box builds confidence and reinforces identity. Remove decision fatigue. Pre-plan actions. Automate triggers. Create non-negotiable routines that don't require daily choice. When action becomes default, resistance loses its power. Celebrate consistency, not perfection. The goal is not flawless execution. The goal is unbroken chains of action. Even imperfect action compounds into long-term result. Discipline as identity. Discipline is the bridge between wanting and having. Without discipline, desire is meaningless. But discipline is not about force, it is about alignment. When you identify as a person who acts, your behavior aligns automatically. I don't wait for motivation. I act. I don't postpone progress. I start now. I show up for myself even when it is uncomfortable. Identity-based discipline eliminates negotiation. Your brain stops arguing, hesitation stops, and action becomes default behavior. Every time you follow through, you reinforce your identity. Every time you delay, you weaken it. Handling life's chaos. Life will always introduce chaos, distractions, emergencies, emotional upheaval, and unpredictable events. The key to lifelong action is resilience under pressure. Strategies. Micro-action during chaos. Even if you can't complete your normal routine, do something small. 5 minutes, 1 step, 1 paragraph, anything keeps the chain alive. Focus on controllables. You cannot control external events. You can control your response. Action under uncertainty builds power and confidence. Environment as a safety net. Shape your environment to guide you toward action even when life gets messy. Tools ready, distractions minimized, and tasks simplified. Refocus daily. Reset every morning. Each day is a new chance to act consistently, recover from slips, and strengthen your habit. Forced action under fatigue. Even the most motivated individuals face days of exhaustion. Fatigue is not an excuse. It is a signal to act strategically. Techniques. Short bursts. Reduce the scope but maintain momentum. Micro wins. Complete one meaningful action to reinforce identity. Physical reset. Move your body, breathe deeply, stretch, or walk to re-engage energy. Acting while tired is training your nervous system to function regardless of conditions. This builds resilience, reliability, and consistency. Momentum meets compounding. By this point, you should understand momentum as a force multiplier. Now it's time to compound it. Each day's action builds on the previous day's action. Each habit reinforces the next. Each small win compounds into larger accomplishment. The secret is continuity over intensity. Even minimal daily actions, repeated consistently, produce results exponential in scale. Compound momentum is what separates the person who dreams from the person who achieves. Fear, doubt, and resistance are allies. Paradoxically, the very forces that stop most people are tools for those who act. Fear shows you where growth exists. Doubt identifies areas that require learning and preparation. Resistance indicates tasks that will yield meaningful results. Instead of avoiding these feelings, you act in spite of them. Action transforms resistance into confidence, fear into mastery, and doubt into evidence of capability. The ironclad chain of action. The goal is to build an unbroken chain of action. Start every task, no matter how small. Complete at least one meaningful step daily. Never let hesitation control your decisions. Treat failures as temporary. Always restart immediately. This chain becomes your foundation. It is the ultimate hedge against procrastination, doubt, fear, and distraction. Once this chain exists, action is no longer a struggle, it is a default state. Identity reinforced by evidence. Every forced action strengthens identity. Over time, hesitation becomes unnatural. Waiting becomes uncomfortable. Action becomes who you are. I am someone who moves first. I am someone who finishes what they start. I am someone who does not negotiate with excuses. These statements are not empty affirmations. They are repeated truths backed by behavior. Living as a force of action. At this stage, your life is no longer reactive. You act before motivation appears. You act before confidence exists. You act before circumstances are perfect. Your identity is aligned with progress. Your environment supports action. Your habits compound silently. Momentum carries you forward. You are unstoppable, not because fear is gone, but because you force action regardless. You are consistent, not because every day is perfect, but because you show up even when life is messy. You are free, not because the world is predictable, but because you have mastered the system of action that thrives in chaos. The final truth. Success, fulfillment, and growth are not gifts, they are engineered through repeated, deliberate action. Motivation may inspire you occasionally, but it cannot carry you alone. Discipline builds momentum, momentum compounds, and identity solidifies everything. Action is not an event. It is a way of life. When you force yourself to act consistently, fear becomes manageable, doubt becomes informative, resistance becomes optional, momentum becomes unstoppable, discipline becomes identity. You no longer chase productivity, you embody it. You no longer wait for permission, you create it. You no longer rely on luck, you engineer it. Every day, every step, every action builds the person you are destined to become. This is not theory. This is practice. This is the blueprint for anyone willing to do what most will not: force action relentlessly, without excuse, without delay, and without fail.